I had this hot tear crying moment in my own therapy session with my therapist. And I said, I don't know if I want to be a therapist anymore.
Today, we are tackling a topic that does not get talked about enough, or at all, actually, which is what do you do as a therapist when you start to realize maybe this career path is not actually the right one for you? Maybe you need to stop being a therapist in order to be okay yourself. Friends, welcome to Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists, the podcast that supports the people who support everybody else. I am Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and this is tough stuff. And that's why I've invited our guest, Dr. Jen Blanchette, to come and share her wisdom and perspective with you. Dr. Jen has lived this exact story, and she's here to share how she found her way through this and what she's seen other therapists do to flourish and thrive, and how you can too. So, Dr. Jen Blanchette, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here again.
Yay, I know. And thank you so much for coming back. And just to refer everybody back, if you want more of Dr. Jen in your life, first of all, she is the host of the Therapist Burnout Podcast. So lots of wisdom and guidance to share. And then you were kind enough to visit with me on Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists previously, where we really talked about the burnout experience, what goes on, why it happens, how to manage it. But today is really different because what we're talking about is what to even do with this. I mean, existential crisis, is that the right word for it? When coming to grips with this, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Is that okay? I mean, there's so much there.
Yeah, there is so much there. And I think for most therapists, it's really a progression. It's a progression of really, I think you can't not talk about this without talking about burnout, because many of the therapists I work with have talked about this as part of their burnout. They didn't realize a lot of things becoming a practice owner. That would include doing admin, dealing with insurance companies, and running a business. I mean, I've probably talked about this so many times, but we don't receive training on how to run a business. And we don't receive training on how to do this in isolation either. I think our supervisors will tell us, make sure that you continue to get peer support and supervision, but that costs money for therapists. And a lot of times, if they're not embedded into a structure that provides it, you are flying solo and you are your own island, and it is on you to do it. And I was doing those things. I was in a peer supervision group, but it really wasn't enough. And in COVID, I think all of the things coalesced where I had this hot tear crying moment in my own therapy session with my therapist. And I said, I don't know if I want to be a therapist anymore. It really took me 2 years to unravel that. And for most therapists, we get into sympathetic dominance. Our nervous system takes over. We are freaking out because we're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. What does that mean? Like, okay, maybe I should change my practice. Maybe I should do all these things. And I'm ramping up my voice because that's what our body's doing. We feel threatened then because we come to this point in our lives. And this is my story. I came to this point. I'll personalize it. I came to this point in my life where I studied to be a psychologist. I wanted a private practice. And then it was making me sick. It was making me unwell. And a lot of that was the pandemic, but I think a lot of people also still experience this, that it just really doesn't work for a lot of therapists, including myself at the time.
I love it. And I'm just sitting here feeling so grateful and appreciative for you right now because of letting our friends here who are with us right now into the experience and sharing your personal story, because I think there is the potential, and tell me if this is true or not, for there to be not just fear, but like also shame around it.
Yeah.
And for you just to tell your story, being normalizing the experience so that, because you're right, our profession is so inherently isolating that people going through this are in their own little, energy dome and not talking to other people about this and just it's holding on to it. And so to hear other people saying this out loud for some people listening right now is probably like, oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
And that this is okay. And that I'm not the only person that have felt this way. And
you're not alone at all. I would just offer that. Like, you are definitely not alone. It doesn't work for a lot of people. And I think the layer of shame is very deep. My mom just visited, interestingly enough. And on her last visit, she told me about 3 times, I really loved that you had your own private practice. Do you ever think you'll go back? So I think we deal with other people's expectations of, even from the outside, how private practice is seen as this pinnacle, as this ultimate point of success as a therapist, that we built a private practice, that we have a private practice. And even like looking at that layer with my mom, seeing me as someone who closed a private practice and wondering like, would I go back, was just very telling. And I was at the point when she was asking this question of being out of my shame shawl of closing my practice. But at the time, I mean, this was just 2 years ago. So at the time, I really carried a ton of just feelings of failure, of shame, of like, I couldn't hack it. I couldn't do this. What am I going to do now? Like, what does this mean about me as a person who's not a therapist now, who really, that was part of my identity. So there's so many layers attached to this about what other people might expect, who you might tell on your caseload that you feel like might really take this badly. I mean, that's a whole huge layer that I worked with therapists on. I felt it in myself, but that's a constant theme that has come up in the work that I've done with therapists when I've helped them close their practices.
When we first started talking, you mentioned that there is this progression, that it's not like you just wake up one day and kaboom, like, right? Even though maybe that's how it feels, but looking back, that we pass through stages on the way to this. Can you share so your personal experience? But I know you've also worked with so many therapists who have gone through this. What are the common stages?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of, holding, it's just so layered that I'm trying to dissect a little bit. I think part of holding a practice and a caseload for years, again, something we don't receive training on, like long-term psychotherapy. How is that different from our training experiences, where likely we hold on to a client for 6 months to a year in training experiences? So when we get into a private practice, when we start holding clients for years, if that's your tendency, or I know we say, oh, some modalities, they'll do that. But I found it's a tendency for therapists in private practice actually to hold on to clients, just to normalize. Okay. Like we get embedded into the fabric of someone's lives. And I think we can get lost therapeutically because we are just they become part of our fabric. Okay, I see Sally Klein on Tuesday. That's part of my Tuesday. And so not that we forget to go back to treatment goals, but we kind of do. We kind of lose our way sometimes clinically of having that cadence of talking to your supervisor or talking to someone else about your whole caseload, about those treatment goals, which is a very basic thing, but we lose our way with that. And so I just go back to holding people on our caseload because I think that's one of the things that I notice. There are huge friction points with people on their caseload where they feel like, I don't even know what to do clinically with this person anymore. I am at a loss, and I've been seeing this person for years. I've done every modality. We've done CBT, we've done DBT, we've done LMNOP. They just want to keep coming and talking, but nothing is moving. And so the simple question I ask therapists, are they meeting treatment goals? Which is right in line with our ethical standards of, is a client meeting treatment goals? What is better service, better serve that client? Are they ready for discharge? I think just looking at those questions from an ethical standpoint is illuminating. And I think it's just having someone to talk with about their cases that's unique. So I think feeling that crustiness clinically is one of those points that I notice where they just feel like, I think that's where it starts. Like, I'm feeling a little crusty. I really am having a hard time with this client. And it's different when I think we all have those situations clinically that are more trying for us. But I think it's different when week to week, we feel totally depleted after that session. That's information. And sometimes that means maybe that client would be better served by another provider, another modality of care, just rethinking your work with that person. So I think that's one of the first signs that I notice.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered that before, but the energetic toll that it takes on a provider, I think about that dynamic a lot in my own work. But I appreciate you giving a voice to how that creates, was to use your words, like that friction, like that, what are we doing here? Kind of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that what are we doing here? And I think over time that builds, resentment grows. And so I think one of the hallmark signs of burnouts is really feeling ineffective. So when therapists start to feel ineffective and like their work really isn't making a difference, maybe it's through those few relationships they have on their caseload. And then that just starts to grow. It's almost like a cancer that's growing in the practice, unfortunately. And they can tell me, like, I don't even feel great showing up to clients. My easy, quote unquote, easy clients, or the clients that I used to feel motivated by. So they're not even enjoying the work anymore. And I think likely colored by these more depleting experiences on their caseload, but also a whole host of things, feeling depleted by running a practice, by doing the admin things that are associated. And something we don't think enough about is isolation.
It's huge.
It's huge. When I started working a contract job in schools, which I still do, that's still my main gig. Now I was like, I like being with people. Like, I like showing up to the office and just enjoying relationships and working on a team again. And I think we forget that we're social beings as therapists. And in our training experiences, we talk about our work all the time. It's like warm and fuzzy. We have our little peer support. I think in my doctoral training, I would have 4 or 5 hours of supervision a week.
Yes, absolutely. And you have your groups and you have your cohort, there was so much. I loved it. It feels like you're, even though you're having individual experiences, like you're going through something together.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think we forget that this work, that therapy work, is inherently isolating because we're not seen. And other professions, like I think of my PT, I go to PT because I'm an athlete. I play tennis and I'm very active. And they often co-treat together. They will see, like, I've seen the other PT in the office and they'll talk about like what I'm going through, and I'll be out in the gym and they'll be kind of talking through things. Their work is seen. So when they have a patient progress, that work is seen by others. And I think that part of being a therapist, of being unseen, and the valuable work that we're doing not being noticed or witnessed, which is inherent in, I think, grief work. When we're holding sadness of another client, when we're holding grief of another client, of our own grief being witnessed, is really important.
Definitely, that it's invisible, and that we have things come up inside of ourselves and we're just alone in it, and you've spent this time with a client, but then you're left with like feelings of grief or trauma triggers, or all kinds of stuff can be coming up. And then to be alone in that is very, it takes a toll.
I think some people might be more suited to private practice. Like, I'm not saying it can work for some people, and I've seen it work for some people. I think super extroverted people that are really getting those social needs met other places, maybe that works for them. But for me and my personality, who tends to if I output that much emotionally, I just have nothing left. And that was the case for me, especially with being a mother. And that's a layer. that I did not realize when I became a mother. And then it was like, okay, I go to work, I care for people, I come home and I'm caring for my children who, when I started my practice, I had a 6-month-old when I started in 2014. And it was just like caring at work, caring at home. And then as I became older and I had toddlers and young children, emotionally, I needed more of a reservoir when I went home for them. And the depletion that came from outputting emotionally throughout my day, I just didn't have anything left at the end of the day. And I was short-tempered. I felt like I wasn't being a great mom to them. And I feel like that realization was also really hard to look at and untangle. How do I want to show up for me, for my children, as a human in my life? And I think we forget to look at the wholeness of the people we are and what the practice might take from us and what renewing experiences we may need to restore that depletion, because it is depleting.
Absolutely. Wow. And so the stages of progression then is that as I think what I'm hearing you say, and this was certainly my experience. I mean, I lived through every single thing that you're talking about, but that we enter forth into private, we are hatched from graduate programs. The cords are cut. We are sent off on our own. And then we go into private practice experiences and have these stressors and are confronted with things that are challenging to manage. And we start taking hits in isolation, in what do I do with this client, like our efficacy, and that what that can turn into, what you're saying is that over time, this just fundamental incompatibility with my okayness as a person, as a wife, as a mom, as a healthy human is no longer compatible with what this is. And I think that like crisis moment can then turn into some different things. I think in my own story, what you're talking about is why I pursued coaching certification, because I did not feel effective with my clients. Like whatever that was, I didn't want to do that anymore. And I needed a different modality. And that really helped me. But that was why I started developing a group practice that at the center has consultation groups and peer support and like we're talking to each other all day long, is to rebuild some of that. And it is also true that is not easy. You can't just snap your fingers and make that happen. I mean, all of that was like multi-year thing. And that it is also okay to say, if that's what this is, I do not want to do that anymore. Or do you think that there's almost like a bargaining phase for people where like they start going into different environments, or maybe I join a group practice, or maybe I do something else, or how do you see that looking?
Yeah, well, I think my phase was definitely bargaining and messy. And so I'll back up. So I think in 21 is when I had my hot tear, in my therapy session, like, I can't do this. That was like in the height of the pandemic, holding clients through COVID, my own children I had a kindergartner and a preschooler trying to, do online school. And luckily that fall they went back mostly. The school district here mostly went back in the fall, but still I was just so dysregulated from all of that, from, okay, how do I figure out seeing clients online and, getting my children what they needed and all of that. So it was just so much. And I did not accept it at all.
Well, it's such a hard pill to swallow. I mean, I bet when you said that out loud, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that out loud. Like, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was my truth.
Yeah.
And I felt that. Like, I felt like it was definitely my truth. So I would say there was a bargaining period, because what I tried to do was think about, well, maybe maybe I'll go private pay. Maybe I'll do some intensives. Maybe I'll launch some of that stuff. So I went into overworking and
which makes everything better,
which is our default. So when we're in threat, most of the time, either we're going to try to fight or flee or collapse. And I feel like I had different stages of all of that. I was trying to, I'd come off panels. Maybe I was going to go private pay. That could have been something that could have worked for me. And maybe it could have worked if I would have stuck with one thing. But I was also dealing with depression and acute panic attacks that I was working through personally as a consequence of what was happening for me and my nervous system depletion, honestly.
Yeah.
That's what I think was the catalyst for my own mental health symptoms, which we don't talk enough about, which I'm happy to talk about openly, talk about that on the Therapist Burnout Podcast. And so
it's real.
As I've untangled like therapist burnout, the more I think about the interaction between depression and burnout and how many therapists aren't being treated for their mental health symptoms, and how that was key in my recovery. And why it was key that I went through 1.5 years of EMDR therapy to work on panic disorder. And I continue to seek treatment for depression, which, has been a theme. So I'm trying to lose. So progression, so bargaining. So the bargaining stage, I think, was alive and well for me. And that continued for nearly another year for me. Or I was pulling back my practice. I kept seeing fewer and fewer clients and I was making more money doing that, but I couldn't take any more on. And so that was information. And so sometimes people need to do that. Like they need to say like, okay, maybe I'll pull back and then maybe charge more. That could be something they do. But I would offer to try to take a true break before you make a big move. So plan some sabbatical. So maybe that's, okay, how can I decrease my expenses for a while? How can I, call in all the favors to figure out how can I take off a true sabbatical, maybe a month, maybe 8 weeks, to really get a sense of what I need right now. Is that mental health treatment? Is that seeing my doctor, which I recommend is your first stop if you're in burnout? Is that pivoting, closing the practice, looking at another bridge job? It could be multiple things for the person, but I feel like if we're in, like I was, and I was like, okay, I'm on vacation, like changing my website copy. And I'm like, if you're listening to this on audio, I'm moving my hands really fast, doing a typing motion.
Typing.
Because I'm on vacation trying to change my website because I'm scared of what this means. I'm scared of what is coming next. I don't know what to do. I feel lost. And I know I'm not the only one, because I have therapists write to me all the time and tell me I'm hopeless. And that's why I continue to do this work. That's why I continue to talk about it on my podcast, because I know I'm not the only one that's going through this turmoil. So, I mean, I really didn't think I came out of a lot of that until I think just some synchronicities. My partner has been in school psychology for a long time, and he just gently said to me, why don't you, like, there's an opening. Why don't you just take a part-time job? See if that's something you can try on. And I was like, all right, fine. I'll go on an interview. And I started doing it while holding on to my practice. And as soon as I had that money that replaced most of my therapy income, I just said, I don't do this anymore. It was very quick. Like in the next couple of weeks, I decided to close. So really doing the math, which I recommend if you want to take a sabbatical, if you like whatever money you want to replace from one-to-one work, do the math and figure out what you need.
Yeah.
And it's like often a lot less than we think it is that we need to replace. And I think a lot of people are scared of that. Like, oh, I'll have to take a step back, but you aren't doing well. Your practice might be taking your life force. Those are the consequences. They might be taking away the energy for your children.
Right.
I mean, these are the stakes.
Yeah.
This is your life. And I think if I would say one thing, it's to look at that. Like, what do you actually need in your life as a human first?
Mm-hmm. Right. This is powerful stuff. There's a lot to think about. And this is probably a good moment for us to mention. And so what I love about you, Dr. Jen, is that you are, I think, such a tireless supporter and advocate of therapists who are in this, like sinking boat in the middle of the ocean. Like, what do I do? Right. And this panic and then you're coming in and talking about this, providing guidance. You're doing your podcast, but you have educational resources that you have on your website and that you're developing, but you've also been so kind to participate in a training resource that I host, a monthly event that awards CEUs to come in and talk about how to make this pivot, how to close down a practice, and some of the internal work that we need to do as therapists to like wrap your head around it and be okay. But then also the practical steps. And you're going to be coming in and teaching a light version, of course. I mean, there's so much more to this, but you're going to give us some basic insights and tips. And we're going to be doing that together in October of 2025. And I think we have the 19th set. If you guys are catching this after that date, this training with Dr. Blanchette is going to be live on my website at growingself.com in the free resources section for therapists. It's totally free. It awards a CEU, and you'll get Dr. Jen's wisdom and also a little bit of a step-by-step playbook. And I hope you talk more about cutting through these false beliefs and actually doing some math, because I feel like what you were just saying there is so important. And I think I've done this too. Like, we get attached to all these ideas about the way things should be. And no, I have to, and I'm trapped. And that when you really like take out your calculator and add that up and no, you're not. Like, I mean, is that one of the things that you're saying? Because I think that's an exercise any of us could do like today.
Yeah.
Like, what is the reality?
I think anytime we're considering our work and the exchange for the resources we're providing in our job, and that includes your practice. That includes all the hours you're putting in to keeping that practice running. And I think we fail to do that. Like, we see like, okay, I am making, $125 an hour or whatever your fee is, and that's my rate. That is not your rate.
No.
At all. Because there are so many hours that we work that are unseen, of taking calls, of calling people back, of doing our notes, CEUs. So all of that needs to cover that in your hourly rate. And like my contract job, every hour that I sit and I'm doing work, I am getting paid.
Amazing.
So that is a huge shift, even though technically that rate might have been a little lower. That's the job, and I think that provided the space for me to be able to do that. I just had a great person on my podcast, Dr. Jason Branch, who was a riot, talk about becoming a bartender. So he had done bartending, right? He had done bartending like in college. That would be fun. And I love his story. You have to listen to it on my podcast. It just dropped in September 2025. But he talked about, he went to the training for bartending school, did not tell anybody. He was like, oh, I'm going to some clinical training. Went to bartending school and completely left. Became a bartender for a while. And I think a lot of people get hung up in these decisions. Like therapists, we are not great at pulling the trigger.
But there's like an identity thing. I mean, can we talk about that? Like, I think that there's an attachment to it. It's not what I do. It's also like who I am, right? Because I think so much of us go into this work. I think that's part of it. But I think also, can we just say, and I think that this has been true for me in my own life. Like, I think it's probably true for most people. is that when I'm not okay, when you're moving into burnout, when you're feeling helpless and hopeless and overwhelmed and anxious, it really constricts your vision of what's possible. You know, like you can only see right in front of you, like put one step in front of the other, and to do like that bigger picture, more expansive thinking of like, what else could be possible for me? Like that requires a not just cognitive freedom, like cognitive flexibility that can be really hard to achieve if you are like dying.
Yeah.
I say that and laugh. It's not funny. That's like, it's awful actually. But I think that it can be hard to get to that place where you're like, you know what I could do? I could be a bartender and I would have more fun, probably more money. And
he talked about earning more.
I'm going to do that.
Like he was earning more than he was as a therapist.
Oh my God. Did he ever go back?
No, he went and got his PhD. I don't know his whole story, but
I have to listen to the podcast.
And then he started working in academia and now doing his own podcast and consulting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're touching upon something really important. So our identity as a therapist is intertwined with ourself. So I am a therapist. And so how do I identify now that I'm no longer a therapist? And it's so funny because I'm a psychologist, so I can still say I'm a psychologist. I work as a psychologist. I almost feel like I cheated, which is even messed up, right? It's even
loophole.
It's just messed up. This is my thinking in some ways, but I just remember like I play tennis, going to talk to my tennis friends. And when I closed my practice, they would sometimes ask, what do you do? And my tendency would be like, I'm a former therapist, or I'm working at this school. And I had this whole probably like 6 months to a year where I could finally tell people, I close my practice and I do this. And now I've been doing what I do for a couple of years now. So I'm fine with it. But at the time I felt a lot of failure. That sunk so hard with me that I felt like I had failed at something. And plus, like terminating with your whole caseload feels a lot like death and grief, because you're saying goodbye over and over and over again to people that are like legit important to you.
I know.
These connections we make in therapy are real, and they can't be in our life because that is the work that we do. But our emotional connection to them and the work, and you, the therapist, being the person that provided that care, is something I just see it sticks with me still. I did that work and I did great work and I had great experiences. But at the time when I was closing, I could only see the failure. I could only see this really ended badly. And I wish I wouldn't have done it. Like, how couldn't I have not seen this? I don't trust myself. I don't trust my decisions. And it was a slow kind of climb for me to start trusting myself again, that, hey, this just didn't work out. This wasn't for you. You don't even like to sit down for 8 hours a day. Like, you like to move around and do different things. That's who you are. Like, you like to consult on teams and, talk on podcasts and teach fitness classes sometimes. And that's always who I've been. I've always been someone who's had like my hands in little things, doing different types of work.
Yeah.
And so sitting more with who I am, I feel like, and like learning more about myself, like doing some work on what did I like when I was younger? Oh, I liked to dance. I liked.
Yeah. It's like career coaching interventions, like an occupational incongruence and getting to that part.
Yeah.
But also I do want to honor and acknowledge what you had said before, is that how hard it is to go and then cut the cords, especially to some of those relationships that are real relationships, but that we do not have a right to, and shouldn't, I mean, obviously continue outside of those professional boundaries. Are you going to be talking about that some on your training? Because I feel like that is really important, that weight of responsibility and the attachment and connection.
I talk about that clinical
obstacle.
burden all the time.
Yeah.
You know, how we sit with that clinical burden, and then, you know, I liken it. I know it's not, I know we don't treat our clients like we're their parents, but I feel like in our nervous system, we feel that way towards our clients in some way, in some capacity, with that caring and that type of care. When we're no longer caring for that person, it's our brain is looking to do it. Yeah. And it's like that's suddenly severed for multiple reasons. As a therapist, we grieve it. We grieve that loss, and that is very real. And it's not talked about anywhere that I can find in doing this work. I've seen some people write about it. I've seen some people talk about it. But I think therapists write into me and resonate with that a lot, because they are like, yeah, people don't get it. They don't get what I'm experiencing and feeling. And I don't even know what to do with these emotions. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking about this differently all of a sudden, because none of this is new information. But I mean, the professional role is to be in relationships with people. And it's like this weird kind of relationship, but it is such a real relationship where we are emotionally invested. We carry the weight of responsibility. Yeah. I think there's a duty component, feelings. I mean, And this is why the world needs you and your work, Dr. Jen. And so I know we only have a couple more minutes here, but before we glide to a halt, I want to make sure that we leave people with some of the tangible, practical supports that you've been putting together, because I know that this is such it's a mission, but it's also a passion. I mean, I see you kind of walking back into the fire to get other therapists and walk out with them again. I love that about you. And tell us a little bit about your resources. And then, of course, you guys, I'm going to pull up the date. We are going to have a deep dive with Dr. Jen on, what date is it? It is Friday, October 17th, 2025, from 11 to 12 Mountain Time. And it's a CEU training. She's going to be walking us through some of her teachings and ideas. So you'll walk away with a lot of practical ways to think, what to do, what next. So I can't wait for that. And if you're listening to this after the fact, that recording will be available on my website for free. growingself.com/therapists is where to find it. But Jen, there's so much more. Tell us about your resources.
So I am developing a course plan for practice closure, and that's coming out in October. But I have a freebie for you. So if if this is resonating and you're considering closing your practice, then I will give you a link. Hopefully you can link that in the show notes here for those who need, I need a guideline. Like, how do I even start to think about this logistically and emotionally? So I've created a guide that helps you walk through those first 90 days of your closure, and really those first initial steps, because you can get bogged down in so many things. And just what are even the first steps for me to think about if I'm wanting to close my practice? And that's from a logistic and ethical and really just an emotional standpoint of like I need a team around me. I need to consider who are the players that I need to think about to contact. And then just logistically, what are the first steps to think about if I am closing my practice?
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. But to have a roadmap, especially again, in a place where you're not okay emotionally, there's a lot of anxiety. And I think you just said something super important, even the ethics around some of this. How do you have those conversations? What do you need to do with clients in terms of connecting with other supports? I'm guessing documentation. I mean, there's a lot there. And so to have that laid out would be such a comfort. And definitely we'll link to this in the show notes for today's episode on the website, growingself.com. And also, of course, Jen, you're all over the place on LinkedIn and your podcast, the Therapist Burnout Podcast. You're doing like a newsletter or something these days, right?
Yeah. So I have a couple. So so my personal newsletter is a therapist pin pal list. So I write back. That's my tagline for now, unless I get super big. So that's one where I write to you different stuff that's on my podcast, more like burnout love letters to you, to therapists about those that are struggling with that. Some reflections from my own life. So that's one resource that I have for therapists. The other one is on LinkedIn. It's called The Shift. And I write once monthly about more broader themes within burnout and mental health culture. So like last month, last month was like the death of the sabbatical and how we really are not resting. So it's more broad strokes concerns related to burnout and mental health in general. Yeah. But I love what's happening on The Shift. And I could see that being like a whole nother podcast, but I'm just keeping it to a once monthly newsletter. So find that on LinkedIn at Dr. Jen Blanchette. That's linked on my profile.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Jen, thank you so much for coming and hanging out again. I love talking to you. I feel like just visiting with an old friend at this point, and I can't wait to see you again in October. And we'll keep the conversation going.